Hey everybody, it's Greg LaBeouf. Welcome to another episode of Awaken, the Protect Our Within. Listen, today we are going to dive into some very muddy waters, and we're going to try to bring a little bit of clarity. We're going to try to distill this a little bit. Today I want to talk to you about threatened or not threatened.
So the big question was this: what do good people do when a society's laws and institutions fail to keep them safe from aggression and violence? How do you get through a growing number of angry, hateful, aggressive people and still remain physically, mentally, and emotionally strong and positive? That was the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Greg LaBeouf, and welcome to Awaken the Protector Within.
Okay, so the muddy water, threatened or not threatened? I had somebody the other day say that their definition of what bullying or violence or aggression was had to include the ingredient of the threat of physical force. You had to be threatened. If somebody wasn't threatening you with physical bodily harm, then it was not bullying. Then it was not aggressive. It was not aggression. It was not violence. It was simply being somebody that was maybe mean, was the definition that they used. Now, I talked in my last podcast about not labeling ourselves and getting past labels because labels come with expectations. Now, we do have to, for clarity, it's okay, like we have definitions of things, parameters of things, but yes, we want to avoid labeling and we want to avoid the expectations. But here's the thing. What's interesting is that if we walk around, and there's many people that have this definition, this is the ingredient, there has to be the threat of physical force. So the example they used specifically was one child walks up to another child at school and says, "Give me your lunch money or I'm going to pop you in the nose." Well, yep, absolutely. That child now that threatened physical force has crossed a line and by definition is now become a bully. They're a bully. So it meets the criteria. If there's no threat of physical violence, then they're not bullying. They are just maybe mean, was I believe the definition or the term that they used. Now, again, I would say to this person, what is your definition of abuse? Because if you say, listen, there's abusive relationships, and the relationships in abusive relationships, first thing that pops in our mind is probably husband and wife, spousal relationships. And somebody says, I was in an abusive relationship. But abusive relationships can exist not just between husband and wives, but between, fathers and daughters and mothers and sons and siblings and parents and aunts and uncles and relationships and coworkers and bosses and subordinates and all kinds of, abusive relations can happen everywhere. But what are the ingredients that would allow us to determine if we were in fact experiencing an abusive type relationship? Is it only the threat of physical force? Is that the single ingredient that has to be there for us to go, oh man, this person just threatened to break my arm, that person's a bully, that now I've experienced violence or aggression? In my opinion, not even close. Because what would you say to somebody that was in an abusive relationship that experienced mental abuse for years, where this person repeatedly and consistently mentally undermines, abuses, even tortures another individual? You say, well, I'm sorry, but was it physical? Did he ever lay a hand on you? Did she ever lay a hand on you? Was there ever the threat of the physical force? You say, well, no. Well, then, unfortunately, you're just dealing with somebody really mean. You're just dealing with an asshole. No, man, listen, you see where the water gets muddy, right? Because again, the difference, and here's why everybody gets stuck on this. Physical threats, okay? I do this in a lot of my lectures. Just let me do a mini version of this, but it literally goes back to an old proverb or nursery rhyme that we're all raised with. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Let's just divide this in half for a second. The first half is dealing with the physical, the sticks and the stones. That's like the threat. That's the ingredient, because see, people can see that. People can see that if somebody took a stick and smacked you in the head and fractured your skull and you're bleeding and you got a fractured skull and they can x-ray that, they're going to say, damn, yeah, we have something tangible here. That person, you experienced violence. You experienced aggression. You came face to face with a bully. You were in an abusive relationship. We have x-rays and broken bones and stitches. See, the sticks and stones part, they may break my bones. See, we all acknowledge that. That's been built into our paradigm, that the physical, we can see it. And when people can see it and touch it and believe it and all that type of stuff, then the trauma, it all becomes real. Then people can sympathize with you, empathize with you. Then people can, they can lend support. They can offer to change your bandages. They can offer to help shovel your walks if your leg was broken. And, it's like it all is just so tangible and so real. So people have this wired into their paradigm that there has to be a threat there. Even if the threat is never executed on. People will still go, oh my God, they threatened you? Somebody pulled a gun on you and threatened to shoot you? Somebody pulled a knife on you and threatened to rob you, or had that knife and held it at your throat and demanded your purse? Oh my God, like that terror, that trauma becomes real because the sticks and stones are in there. Let's take the second half of the proverb. But words will never hurt me. Again, wired into our paradigm. Hey, words, they're just words. They should never hurt you. You should be able to just get over them. And people, again, will always go, oh man, yeah, Greg, but I haven't heard that proverb. I haven't heard that nursery rhyme since I was a kid. Nobody says that. Like, we're adults. We're intellectually smart. We get it. No, listen. You get advice every single time you deal with somebody that's rude, inappropriate, aggressive, or even violent. But none of the physical stuff happens. You get advice all the time where people tell you, parents tell their kids, people tell each other all the time to just suck it up. Man up. Right? Develop a thicker skin. Let it water off a duck's back. Who gives a shit what that person says? That person doesn't know. Who cares? You get some comment from some stranger on the other side of the world on Facebook. Just let it go, man. Forget about that. Why'd you let that bother you? What is the saying? The same thing. You're saying, hey, words should never bother you. But they do. Okay, but here's the bigger point. It's not wired into our paradigm that if somebody's in a relationship, and I believe this to be true, and this is harsh, but I know this because I've seen this in my work. When you deal with people that have come out of an abusive relationship and where the trauma was physical, in part physical, it's never just physical, but in part physical, or that physical component, that ingredient was there, it's like people can understand. I've seen people, they change their responses to these individuals. When they find out they're in an abusive relationship, everybody automatically goes, oh my God, he beat you. Oh my God, he did this. If and when they find out that there was no physical abuse involved, that it was mental and emotional, right away, people are confused. Their compass spins in a million different directions. They don't know. It's almost like they dismiss a lot of it because the trauma, the effects can't be seen. They're intangible. They can't be seen. Okay, so my big thing with this was, how do we clear the muddy waters? We got to at least expand our scope of awareness. You got to expand your understanding to beyond just intellectually acknowledging this. When you deal with, and again, doesn't matter. I don't care what the term is. When you deal with individuals who are expressing in negative ways, I don't care if you want to call that bullying. I don't care if you want to call that aggression or violence. I don't care. When people are expressing in negative ways that are toxic and traumatic to other individuals, the ingredients are not just physical threat or physical violence. I mean, we got to understand that, right? To me, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's even one exposure or if it's repeated exposure. But we're going to have interactions with individuals that are expressing in extremely toxic, corrosive, and septic ways to us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it comes back to what I talked about in my last podcast. It comes all back to, how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel? You can have people that are mentally and emotionally so abusive, so aggressive, and so violent in the way they speak and treat individuals, okay, that even though they never uttered a physical threat to that person, you feel physically threatened. You feel emotionally threatened. It's all the same. When we feel scared and when we feel threatened, doesn't matter if somebody actually said, give me your lunch money or I'm going to punch you in the mouth. It doesn't matter if they actually used physical force or verbalized the physical intent. We feel threatened. Our survival instincts are going to activate because you cannot separate the physical from the mental and the emotional. We are one. It all operates together. Okay, so anyways, I just thought we needed to have a conversation on this because, man, it is scary that people have such a narrow, limited focus and view of what could be construed as abusive or traumatic or violent or aggressive or whatever term you want to put to it. It's all relative to us. So listen, here's the other thing that I want to put into this. I agree 100% if you ask me that we are living in a society today where people are hypersensitive. People are so easily offended. people will use anything to come out and be like, my feelings were hurt, or this happened and that happened, all this stuff. And again, you know what? That's just my opinion on that. Because again, everyone's having and living their own reality. And there's so many things to me that are just, they don't even register on my radar. And yet for other people, I can acknowledge that those things can be offensive, or those things can be, they can be hard for them. They can be traumatic to them, even to a degree, whatever that is. It's okay. I'm okay with that. It's like we either believe that we have the right to express ourselves and the freedoms to feel how we feel and to say the things we want to say. Even if I don't agree with what somebody's saying, I believe deeply in their right to say it. Only thing I separate in that is when you start looking at intent and you start seeing people that are doing things and saying things and acting certain ways and having certain reactions and doing all those things where there's an intent behind it to hurt others, to force your opinions, your beliefs, your feelings, your traumas onto other people, where it's like you're trying to collectively have everybody suffer or whatever that is. No, man, everyone is entitled to feel what they feel, and I'm not going to judge that because I'm not you, and the things that I feel and I experience, they're my unique feelings and experiences. But I think it's very interesting to have these conversations and to try to get through some of this muddy water. And my big point for this, the takeaway is I strongly believe, as I'm sure most of you do too, that abuse or threatening or aggression or violence or bullying, man, we're in trouble if we think that there has to be a physical component. Otherwise, none of that trauma exists. None of that else is real. It's all just whatever. People being mean. No, man, there's people that are abusive. There's people that are toxic, corrosive, and septic that can create and are, that can and will and do, create tons of trauma in other people, and they do it almost with a malicious intent. And it does not have to be solely the physical threat that accomplishes that or that relays that destruction. So, listen, I'm going to leave it there. It's an interesting conversation. And if you have any comments on this, please feel free to share them with me. I love this conversation, love the feedback, and that's how we're going to move forward, is by having some conversations about these things. So that's it, everybody. Until next time, please stay safe, stay ready. Remember, off that X, it's only one step away.
Want to awaken your protector within? If so, then head to awakentheprotectorwithin.ca and get your free Off the X training today.